Welcome. I'm Professor Joe Bisz, and I'm here with my fellow directors of the City University of New York Games Network, aka the CUNY Games Network. And today we're going to play What's Your Game Plan?
Game plan.
All right, so What's Your Game Plan normally looks like this, but since we're online, we're not going to use the actual card deck, but a digital version that I made. What's Your Game Plan is an ideation tool for designing interactive learning activities in games. You can take any one of your existing exercises and transform it, making it more playful and experiential, or build a brand new exercise. You can design for in-person or online instruction, and the result is low-tech. Maybe a card game for your classroom, maybe a role play for your organization's LMS. No video games here. Think activity games. It's for instructors at any academic level, training managers in the business world, and game designers. This design tool has already been featured in at least 100 conferences or workshops, and our group is quite interdisciplinary. Friends, if you could just each introduce yourself, including your fields. Rob?
I'm Rob Duncan. I'm an associate professor of behavioral science at York College and the Graduate Center at CUNY.
Let's see. Carolyn, you want to unmute and...
Sure. I'm Carolyn Stallard. I'm an adjunct professor in the music department at Brooklyn College and an instructional designer at Gutman College.
I'm Devora Klatenik. I'm an assistant professor of computer and information sciences at Brooklyn College and doctoral faculty at CUNY Graduate Center.
And I'm Joe Bisz. I'm a professor of English at Borough Manhattan Community College at CUNY. What's Your Game Plan is composed of 4 types of cards. You have lessons, you have games, you have mechanics, you have actions. There are 9 cards in each of these decks. You draw 1 card from each deck, so there's a lot of options, and you're using these constraints to brainstorm a game that will help you turn your exercise into an interactive activity or into some kind of game. So let's see what we get. First, we're going to draw a lesson card. Now, you don't need the lesson cards. You can actually just pick a lesson that you already have in mind. But because I'm working with the group and I wanted to give them a challenge, we're just picking one randomly. Critical appreciation of an article. Okay. So our goal is to design an engaging, playful, interactive activity or some kind of game that will teach critical appreciation of an article. Our game influence is clue. Okay. Our mechanic, multiple ways to win. And our action is performing. Oh boy. Well, let's see all these together. So we have clue, we have multiple ways to win, we have performing, and our goal is to teach critical appreciation of an article. I'm setting a timer, and we're going to have about 20 minutes, but we'll have a warning in about 10. And let's get started. I think maybe we could start by someone suggesting what does one mean by critical appreciation of an article for you in your discipline?
I think in science, it is really understanding, what the hypothesis and the theory is behind something like that. But if we broaden it to include other disciplines, I think critical appreciation of an article means like maybe critical appreciation of something like in the news, for example.
Okay.
Do you source it? Do you understand who the author is? Do you understand their motivations? Are you reading critically? Are you corroborating evidence from other sources to confirm that this is actually a true statement of fact, et cetera, et cetera?
I like some of the terms you use to classify, for example, hypothesis, thesis, author motivation. Anyone want to add to that or tweak that?
I would say that something that I think about is whether it passes the CRAP test, CRAAP. So that's the currency, relevance, authority, purpose, and what's the other A?
You're not making this up right now, right? This is a real.
No, this is a real thing, yeah.
Sure.
And it's a way to check if an article is actually a reputable source.
Yeah, similar to
So can you give those can you define the acronym one more time for CRAP?
Yeah, CRAP is C for currency, so how recent the article has been written. R for relevance, so if it's actually related to the topic that you're learning about. A for authority, so is the author an expert in this field? The other A is for accuracy, I think, which is, is that author citing other sources? Let me make sure that's the other A. I'm forgetting what the A is. And then the P is purpose. So is the article there for a teaching purpose? Is it trying to make money? Does it have a propaganda sort of purpose? Any sort of thing that's the intent of the article itself.
And for our viewers, normally we work with poster board, but since this is online, I've created sort of an interactive poster board, so we're just kind of brainstorming right on it. Okay.
I like captions a lot. I would just add that if you're looking specifically at a news article, there should be a letter in the acronym for bias, because we could have two news articles that cover the same event with the same purpose, even, which is to give their readership current, up-to-date news, and yet each one has a different angle on it depending on the kind of the implicit bias of the news organization that's covering it. I think we see a lot of this today in a very polarized country. So can we make this get a B in there somehow?
So we know how we might teach this traditionally. We would approach it through these types of categories. Now comes the hard part. Clue's that game about deduction. Anyone here not play Clue ever?
I know it.
Okay. And if we hadn't, we would redraw this card, pick a new game card if most people in the group haven't heard of it. Multiple ways to win, different paths means a student can choose a strategy that fits her personality or ability. Performing, interpreting concept or experience through body language or non-verbal sound.
These are three that don't play very well together. Stack the deck.
So, well, yeah. Well, sometimes that brings some fresh ideas.
Yeah.
Actually, this is a completely random draw.
I'm totally comfortable with this draw.
Well, the word that keeps jumping in my head is deduction, because we essentially want the students to close read and analyze.
Well, so multiple ways to win. The first thing, like if we adopt either I hate to constantly regurgitate this, the CRAP model, there are multiple things there. So maybe the object of the game is to determine whether the article is not reliable, and you only need to identify one of those things. But that gives you multiple ways to prove the article is invalid, which gives you maybe multiple ways of winning around.
That's true. It does, especially for students that fits her personality or ability. So especially for students that might not be very good at figuring out authority, but they're pretty good at figuring out purpose or the currency of the article. I like that direction.
If you're going with a very binary classification of articles, either they're accurate or they're inaccurate, or they're authoritative or they're unauthoritative, and sometimes we have a spectrum. We have an article that's good, but you should realize, or let's say in the science field, if you look at the bias, you'll see the funders of the study, and you say, oh wow, this is where their money's coming from, and that should color the way we think about the results. News organizations covering it. It doesn't invalidate the article. It's just something to.
There's the truth of what you're trying to teach, and then there's maybe the way of making it in the game. So yes, if you don't want to make it an all or none thing, which is closer to the reality, then maybe each round or whatever judgments are being made count towards a evaluation or point system for an article. So if some piece of information is given to a group of students, and they all pick it apart, you might, multiple ways to win might translate into assigning points to each one of these things, and maybe if the article reaches a certain threshold, then it's deemed less reliable, or maybe they're
like a rubric
uses,
right?
Yeah, or maybe a stop signal method where you have green, yellow, or red, something like that.
Oh, to simplify so as academics, we internalize the scoring system. Well, sometimes we don't. We might be really formal about it. But are you suggesting that in order to avoid giving them having to assign scores, we could simplify it, and it's just like red, yellow, green?
Sorry, I like Rob's because there's the all and none, the red and the green, and then there's the yellow, proceed with caution. It's not terrible, but we should keep our eyes open for this.
Right. Undecided, but all of these are still options. Yeah.
The event that you're working on is making an
10
argument
minutes.
about.
So I was thinking clue. Instead of who murdered it, it's who wrote it.
Right. The way I was just thinking of it, and it doesn't have to be this way, just thinking off the top of my head, was that the students are finding the articles. So their event essentially, like in Clue, the event is a dead body. In this game, the event might be you are making an argument about appropriation in a specific song that sampled something else or something. So then you're finding articles that are to support your argument or something. This can go a lot of ways, I think.
Yeah.
So that's the scenario, basically.
So do you make it a constructivist game, like Carol is suggesting, where the students generate content, or do we make it a teacher-driven game where there's content that sets the game in motion, and then emerging gameplay is how the learning happens?
A lot of learning activities and games face this decision, and often, depending upon the needs of the classroom, the training round is the teacher giving it out and them applying, in this case, crap or whatever the model is, and then the more mastery level round would be what Carolyn is suggesting.
Like reverse engineering Clue, instead of seeing that the body's dead and finding out that it's Colonel Mustard with a candlestick, you're actually determining, is this article dead? Meaning you have the cast of characters given to you and you're trying to decide, is this article alive?
Dead. Yeah.
That's a cool way to look at it. I like that.
So what do we have in Clue? We have three things. It's the person, the location, and the weapon, right?
Yeah.
Can we map any of those into our model of evaluations?
Oh, that's a good thematic question. And just for our readers, we're only trying to just remind you that you only have to take one or two elements from each card, but often these cards can serve as inspiration for which way to further develop your ideas. So by map, you mean?
So like I'm drawing from disciplinary literacy, and I cite sourcing, corroboration, and close reading. One of those could be one element. Like sourcing could be the location of the Clue board. Like, is it come from the internet? Does it come from a news source? Does it come from a friend? Corroboration could be, do multiple sources come up with the same bit of information? And then close reading is like looking at the artifact itself to say, well, is this
the weapon? As we're fleshing this out, you mind picking a color, Carolyn, and just creating like 2 scenario cards?
Yeah.
We did not touch one card yet.
Performing.
This would give it. I like what this card is, how this will bring it a little bit more out of the dull learning activity classification level of where we're going, and make it a little bit more playful. So if we could just figure out a way to splash this in there, it would be nice.
So if each participant in the game is not only trying to figure out, so imagine you have 4 players and each one has designed their own scenario with a real article or fake article or a different source and so on, and part of the objective is to trick people into picking your article, then you might have to sell it as well. So there might be a round where you're selling your article or some bit of information related to your article, and other people have to buy in or not or vote. I know there's a precedent for this. It's like Liar's Dice or something, but a little more.
I didn't even think of that. So
It's Balderdash. Balderdash.
So there could be a
So
bluffing.
I wonder. Gotcha.
Oh no, I was like, oh, a bluffing component. Okay, go on. Yeah.
I was just gonna say I'm thinking of breaking down Clue, and at the base of Clue is a game of movement around a board essentially, where you move spaces, and some of the spaces, which are rooms, but break down at base level, the spaces do things, right? You enter a room, you get to do actions in the room. So maybe in place of those rooms are these articles. So students have to get to those articles, and then that's where the bluffing and the performance comes in.
Okay. Yeah. I like that it's physically based as well. It makes it easy to map.
And visually, just to orient ourselves, is it a real board with giant board with articles on it, or is this probably something that the teacher has designed in Google Docs or something, and they click on it and there's a hyperlink?
Make it a tabletop game. Pretend the pandemic is over.
Okay. And there's index cards or something with the name of the article in that corner.
Yeah.
One totally different angle to performing is that sometimes if you have like a controversial statement, one thing you could do with students is to have them line up in the classroom on ends of a spectrum of where they fall on it. So take your favorite controversy and have them go all the way to the left if they agree and all the way to the right if they disagree, and somewhere in the middle if they're kind of along the spectrum in the middle. So if we go back to our red, yellow, green model, so we could say, what do you think about let's say the accuracy of this article or relevance or so on, and then students can physically orient themselves in the room to show what they think of it.
I like that.
It doesn't drastically change the game, but it just kind of gets a little bit more action in, where people, instead of sitting in their seats and talking, are actually getting up, and then
The nice thing about that as well is that it's a game you can play as a classroom together at the same time. So maybe the board is something that is drawn or projected as an overhead, and that everybody's playing at the same time together, making evaluations, and then they decide how they vote on a particular piece of news or a particular component of that news piece by standing up and moving from one side to the other, something like that.
What's also nice about that is if you are teaching online, that's also very easy to apply to online settings synchronously or asynchronously. If you're doing a Zoom class, maybe everyone holds up a different colored paper depending on where they stand. Or if you're doing an asynchronous class, maybe there's a different emojis that they can just put onto something at their own speed, showing where they stand.
Yeah, there's technology.
And the performing element that you suggested, Deborah, adds both a quantitative element, because we can see how many, and you could of course let them make whatever expressions, cringe, yes, definitely, like faces that they actually feel towards the question of whether or not the article is biased or whatever classification that they're experiencing. Since there's a bluffing element, Rob, then there's more than one group, right?
Yeah, well, I would relate bluffing to multiple ways to win. It's like either, like Balderdash, either you guess the actual correct article and the false articles as a player, or you garner the most votes for your false article.
it's been about 20 minutes, and in that 20 minutes, which usually happens, I feel that we have the core, a cool, sloppy, and innovative brainstorm of our game. Maybe we can just take a few minutes to type up bullet points for the main ideas that we agreed upon, and then we review it, and that's it. Been about 25 minutes. If this was a real What's Your Game Plan presentation, we would be now talking to another group about our core ideas. And just remind everyone who's watching, our task was to come up with some kind of engaging learning activity or game that would teach critical appreciation of an article. Our influences are the game Clue, multiple ways to win, and performing. First thing we thought of was the app test. So we're trying to figure out the bias of an article, which involves currency, relevance, authority, accuracy, purpose. Other elements you might wish to tweak this depending upon the objectives of your class. And already, depending upon the level of your class, I'm realizing that even just figuring out the thesis of an article could be an entire lesson, an entire other game. But we built this game more upon a deeper level of analysis. So this would probably have to be another lesson, or for a class that already understands what the thesis or hypothesis would be. Carolyn, do you want to explain again your event cards?
Based on the events that they draw, which would be random but from a student generated card,
Right.
Then they would form their approach to the game and what articles they're looking for, etc.
Okay, and let's look at Rob.
So I took up the challenge of sort of summarizing what we talked about in multiple ways to win and actions. The multiple ways to win part, I think, is stolen from Balderdash, if you know that game.
Awesome.
So building on what Carolyn was talking about, players would create fake news articles, maybe in total or in part, and then each round of play consists of performing or selling a fake article or the real article, and you don't know who has the fake article or the real article. Kind of like Wait, Wait, Don't Tell Me on NPR. You don't know what the real story is. And then players have to guess each round to find the real article. A player can win by correctly identifying the real article or garnering the most votes for their fake article.
Then do they get Carl Castle's voice on their answering
On
machine?
their answer machine, one would only hope. Bill, remember he has a new...
Oh,
Bill.
right. Yes.
Okay, Deborah?
I just sort of the performance bit where we could use physical actions to show how much you support some kind of statement, whether the statement is accuracy of an article or the accuracy of a student-generated article or so on. And Carolyn has some great ideas for how you could transfer this to online classes, synchronous or asynchronous, by using color-coded signs or emojis. That would be great.
There's a hands up icon in Zoom now, right?
Yes.
Unfortunately, only one level, not red, yellow, green. Guess we'll have to write them and ask for.
There's you can just assign
Oh.
them to whatever.
Oh, there is more than one.
Yeah. So here's a good one. That's you like it. That's you don't like it. I'm gonna remove that now.
Yeah. Thanks.
I think they fade away over time.
Yeah.
Near the end of our activity, we thought of using, last minute, the clue board to actually, elements of the clue board to sort of thematically represent the aspects of our game. So it looks less like an exercise and more like something fun. The locations, so we might draw some abstract locations on piece of paper or cards and then list the actual sources, perhaps links to those sources that are articles, reports from friends, etc. The suspects in the game of Clue, if we use this element, maybe it's some kind of drill down of what the motivations of the various authors are. You could create these with your students, and the weapon could be the artifact, the article itself that's being analyzed. That's it. That's our 25 minutes, which is actually, since we did a little presentation, even a little bit shorter than a regular what's your game plan. But now I'm confused. Do we have to discuss like IP rights and stuff? Like, can we all use this, or
All donations to charity.
this is really great, guys.
That's my cue to offer you an apology, Joe, because I accused you of stacking the deck to give us an impossible mission. Look at that.
It's a natural reaction to stare at them and to be like, what the. I mean, maybe there was one card that struck me as a little too easy, so maybe I redrew it just to give this group a challenge. But I'm not I'm not admitting anything. So,
well, to designers out there, if you're still taping, we didn't sew this up really nicely, but most of us have taught this style in our classrooms and maybe have designed hundreds of games over the years, hundreds, literally, of students, and you get so good at it, sometimes that the answer just pops out at you really, really quickly.
And Rob, you actually use this with your students, right?
Yes, the very first activity my students play in my game design class for behavioral and social purposes is what's your game plan?
Nice. This is what's your game plan, and I'm about to tell you also about our conference. But for more information on what's your game plan, you could visit my website. It's joebisz.com. The game is actually available as a card deck. You can pick it up. It's for sale. There's also a free digital version. It doesn't have all of the cards, but it's enough to get you started. That's on my website as well. And now let's talk about the CUNY Games Network. Depending on when you're watching this, we have a conference. It's coming up completely online in 2021. Here's our address. Also, you can just type in cunygames.org. This year, it's going to be completely online, but in normal years, it's usually face-to-face here in New York City. This conference is free. That's online. Each year, it's probably one of the cheapest conferences that you'll ever go to. We have a lot of fun. Check us out. We'd love to meet you. Any last thoughts, everyone?
Nope. Thanks for hosting, Joe. Thanks for playing, Carolyn.
You guys, thanks for playing. So, bye, everyone. Take care.